Great, thank you. Are we live? Yes.
You're all upgraded. Who's this though? Is this one of yours?
More chairs, we can do that. Let me also take this opportunity that as we continue to renovate beginning in January, the new kitchen, but we're also going to have a much better gathering space downstairs. So all of you who are standing at the back of the parish hall will have your own spot coming forward.
Go ahead.
Ya'ate, my friends. That is a Navajo greeting that extends God's blessings to those that you are greeting. And we're going to open with, can everybody hear me? Okay. It's hard to manage all these things and hold the microphone. Do you need the microphone for me?
Yeah, I'll get it up for you then, don't worry.
We're going to open with, by reciting together the gathering prayer. Then each of us will share our different aspects of our pilgrimage, and we're happy to stay afterwards to answer questions and show some of the items that we have brought. So let's say together the gathering prayer. Let us pray. Creator, we give you thanks for all you are and all you bring to us for our visit within your creation. In Jesus, you place the gospel in the center of this sacred circle through which all of creation is related. You show us the way to live a generous and compassionate life. Give us your strength to live together with respect and commitment as we grow in your spirit. For you are God now and forever. Amen. Our host and guide in Navajoland, you see between Father Pete and Mother Kate there.
Thank you.
Right, okay. Was the Reverend Canon Cornelia Eaton. She's assistant to the bishop of the Mission Diocese of Navajoland, a Navajo priest who is a Virginia Seminary graduate, a close friend of Pete's, and a former student with Kate and with me. She feels a special call to heal the generational trauma of the Navajo people through the revival of the Navajo language in liturgy, by integrating indigenous spiritual practice with classical theology, which is a project she undertook with Mother Kate, and by using the visual arts in the sanctuary. But first I want to orient us to the territory. Oh, here we go. Sorry. The map here shows the Navajo reservation in the dark. And can you see here the 4 sacred mountains, 1 here, 2, 3, and 4. The Navajo, who call themselves the Dene, which simply means the people, are linguistically and culturally linked with the Athabascan people from the Pacific Northwest up into Canada. But they consider themselves, by their myth and their origin stories, they claim that the land between the 4 sacred mountains is their ancestral homeland. And this map here, which we used on our travels along with Pete's blue dot. No, that was a joke. He converted us to the blue dot, shows the diocese, which you see here is in the eastern part of the reservation. It has 3 regions, each with 1 large and 2 smaller churches. So the San Juan region here in New Mexico, the diocesan headquarters at All Saints in Farmington. There's also St. Michael's, which is Cornelia's home church, and St. Luke's in the desert. The Utah region up here, St. Christopher's is the largest church, and the other 2 small churches, St. John the Baptizer and St. Mary in the Moonlight, where sadly we didn't go, but I want to go next trip. The southeast region down here in Defiance, the largest church is Good Shepherd, and the other churches are St. Mark's Coal Mine and St. Joseph's House Church, Many Farms. And the spiritual heart of Navajo land is here, the Canyon de Chelly, and here is the Canyon de Chelly. And how many here have been to it's just an amazing place, and Pete will talk about our prayers at the edge of that canyon. And I invite you to explore the really fine website of the Episcopal Church in Navajo land, which has many details about these individual churches, about the spiritual life in the diocese, and about their projects for self-sustainability. Here are some of the Navajo clergy here, the Navajo priests, Paula, Catalina, and Leon, and here other priests on the left with the gray hair, Inez Velarde, who is retired, although she says you never retire from God, and in the middle, Cornelia, on the right, Cornelia's mother, Alice, who was a lay pastor. You can tell from the map that this, and maybe I have the map again. No, I don't. You can tell from the map that this is a vast landscape with 3 regions separated by a drive of at least 2 hours. We were in the car 4 or 5 hours every day when we visited these different regions and the Canyon de Chelly. The land is parched, sparsely populated with extremes of weather and living conditions. This is the view out of our window during a dust storm on the left, and when the dust storm had cleared the next day. And imagine driving. We were glad to be in the guest house and not on the road. Kate saw a sign that said, use extreme caution, 0 visibility possible on the road, on the main highway. Poverty and unemployment, high rates of diabetes and heart disease, the lack of electricity and running water, and access to medical facilities led to disproportionately high death rates from COVID. There were whole families that died in spite of a very high rate of vaccination. And there are also high rates of substance abuse and resulting domestic violence. This is a population suffering from what is called generational trauma, resulting from many things, from the policies of the Spanish conquerors, of Mexican settlers, and from our own US government. If you've been part of the sacred ground discussions, this will come as no surprise to you. And this trauma of all the native peoples included for the Diné their long walk in 1863, and here you can see the path of the walk, when they were starved into submission and then marched 300 miles to Fort Sumner in New Mexico. They were marched from the Canyon de Chelly. Those who survived 4 years of hunger and disease signed a treaty allowing them to return within the 4 sacred mountains. They said, we'll do anything to return there. Don't send us to Oklahoma, which was the first plan. In the 1930s, the US government, in an effort to control overgrazing, but without consultation with the tribes, ordered the destruction of hundreds of thousands of livestock, primarily the sheep, which are vital to the Navajos' identity as a people. They also suffered abuse in adoptions outside of the tribe, and this issue is coming up again now before the Supreme Court, and in the tragedies of native boarding schools. Cornelia describes her mother's experience at boarding school, of crying every night under her covers and reciting the Lord's Prayer in Navajo to herself to help her remember her native tongue, which was forbidden to her at school. One focus of Cornelia's healing ministry is art that will speak to the people of their heritage. These magnificent Navajo rugs, one of the great art forms of the Dene, already grace many of the sanctuaries here at St. John the Baptizer and St. Christopher's, and then here on the altar and on the rug leading to the altar at Good Shepherd. Good Shepherd also has a set of vestments that with a set of vestments with symbols of Navajo communal and spiritual life. The hogan, can you see that structure on the left on the purple chasuble? That's the hogan, which is the place for ritual ceremonies. The sheep, so important to the Navajo. On the right, you see the sacred corn, and on the white chasuble, you see the 4 mountains. This Navajo Mary, who's a little worn and weather-worn, with the infant Jesus in a cradle board, a Navajo cradle board, sits on the grounds of St. Christopher's, a Mary represented as Navajo. Cornelia grew up in a church that has a Navajo Christ above the altar. This is St. Michael's. And on the wonderful processional cross that you see here, and here is Cornelia showing us the front of the processional cross and the back, which has the back of Christ's head with what's called the Navajo bun, which is the traditional male way of wearing his hair. All the churches have, there we are with the cross, and this the corn, and the painting is above. And this is a painting by the Navajo artist James King, recently deceased, that shows an indigenous Christ standing over and blessing a native healing ritual. But there are all white stations at All Saints, all white cast of characters. St. John the Baptizer has a Navajo John the Baptist baptizing a white Christ. And St. Christopher's and other sanctuaries have a set of stations of the cross set among the Navajo, but depicting Christ as white. So it leads to the particularly poignant scene of Pilate as an elder with all his wrinkles, sitting as an elder condemning a white Christ. Cornelia's mother, Alice, who was a longtime lay pastor, and Cornelia's father was a deacon at St. Michael's, told me that in her conversations with parishioners and making her rounds, that there is a pervasive sense among the Dene that they are in many ways less worthy than white people. And these paintings perpetuate that self-image. So I was honored when Cornelia asked me to offer my skills to paint a Navajo Christ as an icon for the diocese. Here's the painting, and this is a sketch, preliminary sketch for Christ the Healer, the Eternal Dawn. And the frame alludes, you can see, I don't know how well you can see this, the frame around the edge alludes to Navajo ritual, the sacred mountains, plants and animals with ritual objects across the top. And that's painted in a very different way from the figure in the center. The Navajo words at the bottom, which you can see, and and you can come up and look at it afterwards for a better view, are the first lines of the Blessing Way prayer that we'll end with, and which I cannot read. And Navajo is extraordinarily difficult even to pronounce. It has 4 different A's with different marks. I mean, it's, you all know about the Navajo code talkers, okay? That's because it's such a difficult language. And the words in English are, Jesus Christ, young man chief, God's almighty son. The landscape on the right, or the left actually, the landscape on the left is from my sketches that you see there of the red rock country of Utah and Arizona, and the brown cliffs of New Mexico are on the right. So it spans the diocese. And Cornelia said, you can always tell where someone is from by the color of the dirt on their pickup truck. Okay. On the left, behind Christ, is the hogan, and on the right, the sheepfold. And remember, the sheep are so significant to the identity of the Navajo people. And the sketch on the left is my sketch of Cornelia's sheep. That's her sheepfold. And I think I've got pictures later on of the sheep coat. And they are, well, you can understand how devastating it was when you understand the role of the sheep to have to slaughter all of those livestock. There's more sheep. I happen to love sheep. So anyway, moving right along. The figure of Christ himself and what Christ is wearing is what he wears was dictated to me by Alice, who also served on the tribal council. Here is Alice there in her garb here. And you will notice that the necklace she's wearing, the belt she's wearing, are what Christ is wearing. We go back to that. And I can't resist showing you this picture of Alice, who is the infant in the cradle board there. So let me just go back to the painting, because the hogan always faces east, and the ceremonial wedding basket always faces east. This is the doorway of the hogan. Cornelia explained all of and the 4 mountains are here and a lot of things, the sage bundle, but it always faces east. So the door of the hogan faces to Christ, who is the dawn, the rising dawn here. And wonderfully, when Cornelia was able to come in August, we went in May, late May, early June. So when Cornelia came to look at this painting, and she also had appointments at Virginia Seminary, she stood in front of this painting, and she stood there and looked, and then she opened her arms, and then she said to the figure, Ya'ate, which was a wonderful moment. So Kate, you are on. Oops. Wait, I'm still hooked up. Oh, wait.
Okay. Friends, I want to give you some background for why I joined this pilgrimage to Navajoland, and then some of the spiritual and theological lessons that I learned when I was there. I was grateful to Peggy, to Cornelia, our host, and to Pete that I could join, because I was raised in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And this is an area that was part of the Iroquois Confederacy, the Northern Woods peoples, and the Ojibwe were a a living community in my hometown. But they suffered from many of the elements that Peggy laid out so well that also afflict Navajo land. Poverty, a separation from the land and work that was theirs, and chronic problems of disease. And one of my strongest memories as a girl was of going to school in my grammar school with Ojibwe children. And by the time of 7th grade, I would look around and the boys and girls who were important to me, who were in the classrooms that I attended, were suddenly gone. The children simply stopped coming to school. And while I was a child, the houses that were built on what were ancestral lands were condemned because they had dirt floors and outdoor plumbing. So this erasure of the native peoples who were of great dignity, of great number, of great spiritual power in the region of the Upper Peninsula, that erasure was laid on my heart early on, and I have considered it part of my vocation to remember that, as a descendant of European settlers, to repent of it, and to find ways that I might participate in some witness, but also some healing and reconciling work if it is given to us when it is. So this trip to Navajo land was a pilgrimage in a distinctive way for me, as part of my childhood, part of my vocation, part of my continuing witness to the spiritual depth of these people. So this is the element that I would like to focus on, this spiritual and theological element, because that was really these pictures of me and Cornelia give a flavor of what the pilgrimage was for me. It was my chance to see Cornelia, who made this daring move out of the four sacred mountains to the east to be with us at Virginia Seminary, and to undertake the work of finding a route by which her own Navajo identity and language, artifact, ritual, custom, icon can be integrated with the Christian tradition as it has moved its way from the Mediterranean up through Northern Europe and into what is now the United States. And what this pilgrimage did for me, offered to me, was the chance to see Cornelia in her own setting, with her people, as the leader of her people. It is my own prayer that Cornelia Eaton will be the next bishop of Navajo land. And to see that integration taking place not only in the artwork and in this remarkable painting and sketches that Peggy has done, but also in her person. She is, in her own life, this reconciling and integrating whole. So I'll give you some examples of this integration, and then an example too of the profound theological discussions that Cornelia and I had in the midst of driving out to a water well to feed the sheep on her sheep farm. Cornelia brought us to a hogan on her ancestral land. And this hogan is an architectural expression of the universe. So in the same way that some Renaissance artists depicted the human being as the cosmos, so the hogan is itself the structural and material expression of the universe. Round, but also having the four winds, the four corners of the earth, the four sacred mountains typified and enacted in it. The door, as Peggy said, is that gateway, that eastern gateway. And the people who enter the hogan do so and move from the east around the hogan in a ceremonial circle, taking a trip through the Navajo land, but through the universe from east to west. And it is there that many of the most important rites of the Navajo people are honored and enacted. And Cornelia told us about the coming of age rite that was carried out for her daughter in the hogan. And then Cornelia led us in prayer, a prayer that was itself this offering of reconciliation to those of us who were settlers, who were sometimes their friends and most often their persecutors, and a chance to worship the young man chief, Jesus Christ, as the great healer. She led us outside in front of the hogan and touched the earth there to feel the healing of God's own creation and the spiritual force of the land that contains all of the image and the life of the ancestors. It was a very powerful moment where I was allowed to be a guest at this place and with these words, and to acknowledge what it is that my own past represents, but the hope of a new future. It's a profound reflection on the doctrine of reconciliation. This is a church that I found particularly powerful, the St. Luke's in the desert. One of the things I want to underscore about the Diné, the Navajo people, is their profound spiritual life. You feel that the minute you're there. It's, of course, a place of great poverty and need, and all of the things that Peggy said are true and probably increasingly true. And in the midst of that is this profound connection with the people themselves, with the land, with the cosmos, and with God's Spirit. And all of that spiritual power was expressed in St. Luke's in the desert. This small building that was built in the 19th century, not far from a trading post. And this interior is saturated with prayer. You walk into this small box, and the incense of human prayer that has been raised over the decades there becomes obvious, palpable, powerful. Here you can see in the, Peggy has taken a photograph of some of the hymnals that have the Lord's Prayer in Navajo, as well as the James King painting that has been placed in all the churches in Navajo land. And this collection of Eucharistic vessels is in Cornelia's own church in St. Michael's outside Farmington. And one of the things that struck me about these vessels is that they powerfully combine the elements that are sacred and profound to the identity of the Navajo people, the significance of the stone, the silver, the metalwork, and the deepest expression of our sacramental life, the paten and chalice. This integration, I'll just say in closing, was the foundation for my conversation with Cornelia about notions of sacrifice and the doctrines of atonement, because this was a pilgrimage of reconciliation, costly reconciliation. And Cornelia said that for her, Christ is the profound healer. There is sacrifice in Navajo piety, religious life, and some of their traditional rituals and sacramental sacred stories have death and the encounter and overcoming of death as a centerpiece. But rather than focusing on the death of Christ and of his self-offering, which has been central in my own Eucharistic piety, she focuses on the way in which Christ teaches, welcomes, builds up, elevates, and heals. So this gave me a chance to think more deeply about how we combine ideals of sacrifice and self-giving, the centerpiece of Christ's own self-offering on the cross, and his ministry and teaching as one who reconciles and who nurtures and draws together. So this is work, theological work, that this pilgrimage has given me to continue to reflect on.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Excuse me, we need to let Pete.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
Pete's got,
And
so
then-
that would, is that okay?
Of course.
Thank you, Kate. I have never followed a world-famous theologian before. Talk about. Gotten decent grades in her class, but not shared much. Serenity now. I don't want to share too much because I want you to have an opportunity to ask questions. But what for me began as a trip with Kate and Peggy to visit my friend Cornelia and to build some relationships and just be there and see what the Spirit does quickly became a deeply, deeply personal and powerful pilgrimage. And there is a very big difference between a trip and a pilgrimage. And I want to talk about two things and then open this up for questions. But the first is how enterprising the different churches were. So in many of the churches that we visited, as you might imagine, their budgets don't look like ours, and their resources don't look like ours. But the hope and joy was overflowing and really remarkable. And I don't want to sentimentalize financial difficulty or our Navajo brothers and sisters, but it's worth noting that they, in the face of historic and generational poverty and trauma, what they have done to continue to sustain themselves, and they are often reliant upon the National Episcopal Church, which is pretty incredible. So one of the ministries is a soap-making ministry. We hope to perhaps have some of their soap here for the Advent Mart, asterisk, but hopefully. And they make soap, and they sell them, and they wrap the Blessing Way prayer in that soap as well. And we were able to meet the folks that do that and take some home with us. And other products like lotions and things like that. And this goes to serve the Episcopal Church in Navajoland. There were other folks that made beads, and there was a lot of beading that happens in these, particularly with beading and weaving. This is a communal activity also, so people gather together and make sacred art and then sell that to help sustain their ministries. Is there one or two I'm forgetting?
The retreat center at St. Christopher.
Yes, and in Utah there's a retreat center where you can go and you can go on retreat and you can be on campus, and it's right up against these beautiful red cliffs. The landscape is stark and it's beautiful. There's no doubt that it's you and God. And the other thing is, there are many things, but the desire for reconciliation and the offering of that reconciliation in light of the generational trauma, in light of the fact that, I forget how to pronounce it, but the word for Western white people in Diné, in Navajo, the translation is those we went to war with. And yet, we were invited over and over and over again. And, God with us is part of what our faith means, to see where God is with us. And they continued to invite us to be with them. And when we were on the edge of Canyon de Chelly, and it was the three of us in Cornelia, and this is where there were Navajo that had been starved out and moved on the long walk. So a lot of death in this canyon, where the elders don't go. It's too painful for the elders to go back there, even though this happened a couple generations away. Cornelia began to pray, and the wind began to sweep up, and you could feel the dust and the sand start to hit your legs. And as we're looking out over this canyon that contained all of this death and trauma and pain, hope began to swirl. And the spirits of the ancestors were there with us as she was praying. And when she finished, we were different people. And she looked out and she said, of the ancestors who went through this trauma, she said, because of us, because we are here now, because we are in this place, they are redeemed. And that process of redeeming the past has begun, simply because we were there. And so we have a ministry on race, reconciliation, and equity here. We have a framework through which and with which we may begin to continue to deepen those relationships. And I offer that up to the future, and in the hope that we might be participants and continue to be in that place. So we only have a few more minutes, so.
Do you want to read the blessing way prayer for us?
And then we'll do questions and answers? Yes, sure.
Why don't you read it, because it's long.
Okay. This is the blessing way prayer. Jesus Christ, young man chief, God's almighty Son. Now I've made your offering, your smoke I've made. Today your child I became. Today your grandchild I became. As you say to me, I'll do. Your commandments I will follow. Just as I pray to you, you do it. Watch over me. You stand as my defense. In my defense, stretch out your hand. Plead in my defense. From wood stream to me be peace. From all growing things to me be peace. From breeze courses to me be peace. From passing rains to me be peace. From passing thunder to me be peace. Just by me let dew fall. Just by me let corn pollen form. Before me peace, behind me peace. Walking along life may I be. Always in peace may I be. Peace has returned. Peace has returned. Amen.
And as she was praying this in Navajo, she was doing this. From passing rain to me be peace.
So she did do it in Navajo?
She did. And they do the Lord's Prayer in Navajo. They sing Amazing Grace in Navajo. I think we should all come up.
Pete said the wind came up. It was in Navajo she was praying?
Yes.
Yes.
The wind heard her.
So questions?
The question I wanted to ask was, in the, it seems like it's a big traditional thing in Native Americans to have this deep belief that mystical things take place regularly, which is not necessarily a common Christian way of how we think.
It is, but go ahead.
Okay. It is for some people. It is for some people. But to the extent of how much it's part of their daily life, how did those two things in your spiritual feeling fit together?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, and it raises powerfully and beautifully the whole question of integration and of reconciliation. I think my own experience being there is that I was in a place of permission. It is a permission to see the world as it truly is. That is, that God is sovereign and acts in the world according to his will and good pleasure, and that the laws of nature are his own creation, that he sustains, but that he can also guide, interrupt, and change. And that, I think, in our European point of view has been covered over and occluded. So when you enter the Navajo land, the reality of the world as God's own place is revealed, disclosed.
I think we need to honor the 11 o'clock, but I know we're all happy to be here and answer questions.
Thank you all so much.
There is one more thing. Those two more things. One, we're going to stay and answer questions you have. for those that want to stay. And the second thing is, Cornelia, we will be inviting her to come and do a forum just hers. You heard us talk about her. But so look for that in the future, maybe January or February.
And come, there's things to come look at here, beads, no soap.